Welcome, everyone. This is our Women in AI Calgary team hosting this online masterclass featured by Tara, who is already in the call that you can see her face. We'll get to her introduction very soon. Before that, I would want to introduce a bit about Women in AI and our Calgary team. Chelsea, if you can go to the next page, please. As many of you may have already known that Women AI is a not-for-profit, a global network. For us, this is the group of Calgary, but we're part of the Canada team. And we have organized a ton of events in the past year and benefit a lot of our members. And also, our mission is to close the gender gap. We're a volunteer-based organization. So everyone you see here is we're using, especially now is our noon time when we have our lunch break that we organize this event. It's all made available by our amazing volunteers. And Chelsea, in the next page, you can see this is our Calgary team filled by amazing women. And in the past year, we came along very well, and everyone is here to help the community. We want to host high quality event like this, and we're also open to get any of the feedback. In the next page, you can see my email address, and I forgot to tell you my name. My name is Yukun Zhang. I'm the Calgary City Lead. I'm not nervous, just saying. And this is my email address. You please feel free to send me any feedback about our event or any of the events that you want to see happen in Calgary, because the reason why we're here is to organize events that will benefit our Calgary and also broader community. So please feel free to let us know what you want to see, what you need. And also, please follow our LinkedIn account. All of our event update will be posted on LinkedIn. And then this, I will turn it to next page. This event is made possible by our amazing Calgary strategy lead, Chelsea Squires, who is on the call that will take over the mic.
Thank you, Yukun. This picture always makes me miss my long hair. It's like when I see it like that, I'm always between like the flip of whether or not I want to cut it off or keep it going long. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. I'm absolutely ecstatic to introduce Tara Dragon, who's giving the Beyond the Jargon Communicating Tech for AI project success. And Tara is an experienced technology transformation and business leader and has worked across several different organizations and several different industries. She has built her career delivering high quality and award-winning information technology projects by bridging the gap between business stakeholders and technical teams. And Tara actually gave a similar presentation within the team that I work with. And it's honestly the best set of notes and the best advice I have ever heard on this extremely important topic. One of the biggest questions that I get of people wanting especially to break in tech or kind of level up their careers in tech is, what are these skills that I need to be learning? This is the optimal soft skill if you want to be making impact within your organizations as a technical person. So without further ado, I'll hand it right on over to the woman of the hour. And thank you so much, Tara. Sorry, I will just say, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. We'll be moderating that as we go through.
Thank you for that warm introduction. Let me just pull up my slides here and we'll get started. Okay. Thank you for joining today. I see lots of familiar faces or names in the chat, so it's nice to see some people that I've worked with in the past and currently, as well as to meet all of you who are here today. What we're going to talk about is really just walk you through some of the context, why communication is important, share a few ideas. Then we'll get into some of the actual theory behind it, how that theory relates to communicating in the workplace. And I'll leave you with my golden rules as well as some very relevant examples at the end. And like Chelsea mentioned, if you do have questions, pop them into the chat. She's going to try and keep an eye on that while I'm going through the talk today. So the very first question we're going to start off with is, I'm going to take the perspective of being a technical team member or an AI team member, and why is it important that you need to communicate effectively. The very first principle is that great AI products cannot be built in a vacuum. So we all know this. We don't send data scientists or developers or technical people into a room and say, hey, go do it. We need people in context and people with information around our organization to help provide the information about, what problem are we solving? What are we trying to do? What's the outcome that we expect? And then especially providing context around the data. Does it make sense? Is what we see really how it happens in the real world? The other reason that we need to be able to communicate effectively is sometimes there's decisions made within a project. Should we do path A or path B? What are the trade-offs? We also need to be able to communicate effectively where we're at in a project. What's our scope? What's the schedule? What's the budget look like? And often that is linked to what's happening technically in the project. The other piece, which I think sometimes gets overlooked, is communicating effectively about the work that we do is important to share up and out within the organization. Why is what we're doing important? What are we actually solving? What are the great things that we're doing? What is the value of this AI product to the organization? And when we're thinking of it in all of these contexts, if we keep our language too technical or at a level that the business stakeholders will not understand, then there's going to be lots of issues and barriers to communicating effectively. So first question is, why can this be so hard? Like, why are we here today? Why are we learning this skill? Why am I listening to Tara talk about this? Well, for the last 20-ish years, I've been leading different varieties of IT projects, and this is a super skill that I have, and it's really being able to bridge the gap between technical team members and business stakeholders. So what is it that's being built, and using code and development languages and all of those things, and what does that mean for the business? And so why are the two groups why is it hard to communicate between them? Why do individuals on the teams have such a difficult time conveying messages in a way that the other team understands? And really, it just comes down to the work that we do within our organization. The groups have different skills. They solve different types of problems on a daily basis. They solve those problems in different ways, different work experience and background and education, often work in different types of team structures. And even I'd go so far as to say incented differently within their roles. So all of those factors contribute to why there can sometimes be a misalignment when you're communicating. The other point that I want to bring, and I think this is especially important for people who work in AI, is the intimidation factor. So you'll see at the bottom of my slide, I have some stakeholders, some business stakeholders, and what they hear when they are going to meet with, the AI expert or, a machine learning specialist or something, they think of PhDs, physics, statistics, big brains. They must know everything, right? It's a bit of a foreign concept, some of the pieces that AI experts, specialize in. And there's a bit of intimidation to someone who doesn't have maybe the same level of technical education or background. And so there can be a little bit of intimidation, right? Like, what does little old me with my, technical degree or my, soft skill degree, what can I say to a PhD? There's that kind of a bit of a misbalance or imbalance in terms of the relationship between the two groups. And I know it's no fault of anyone's. It's just the way sometimes our society works, right? Is people who have, very advanced training are highly revered, and rightfully so. They know lots of things about their given topic. Okay, so when we think of that as the context, both that we're coming from different places, there's a little bit of an intimidation factor. Imagine now that you want to be in, or that you are in one of these situations where you want to convince someone of something, or you want someone to take action, or maybe you want to influence a decision, earn funding for initiative, share a great idea. There's all sorts of examples like that, big and small, that we can think about that happen in our everyday work lives. And so what is the best tactic that you should take? Well, Lizzie here, my little daughter, she's 2.5, and she will tell you, hands down, 100% of the time, the best way to get her way is a tantrum. So we know that those don't work in the workplace. And so I would, often we always go to the presentation or a discussion, right? Let's gather some facts. Let's build out a logical argument and lay out our case. This is why it should be this way, because all the facts tell us that. Okay. What's missing from that kind of an approach? Emotions. So when we go back to my dear Lizzie, she's on the right path. However, maybe a little overdone for the workplace, but she's got the idea, right? She wants something, she has some emotion about it. And the only trick and the difference between a 2-year-old and those of us in the workplace is that we need to make sure that that emotion fits both the goal of the discussion as well as the audience. So to be clear, I do not recommend tantrums in the workplace, but I do support putting a little bit of emotion into your discussions. Moving this from my kid to some actual theory, we're just going to take a little bit of a dive here into some Aristotle. And so the way that I like to think about this is that there's 3 approaches that you can take to building an argument or sharing information or communicating with someone. And so if I'm up here in front of you, I could take different tactics for it. So the ethos piece of it is, it's all about credibility or character when making an appeal or an argument. It's the position that you're in or the power that you have. It's the credibility. This is a perceived expert or a known expert, and therefore we shall all listen to that person. Pathos is Lizzie's tactic, right? That's persuading an audience by eliciting some kind of emotional reaction. And then the logos, which I know is where a lot of data scientists and AI experts tend to be because of the nature of the technical work in your schooling, is using facts and logical reasoning to support an argument and persuade an audience. So that's laying out your argument crystal clear and going from there. So we know that we have all 3 of these, and to be truthful, in most cases, the magic is in communicating effectively is having the right balance of the 3. So not all one or all the other, but blending it so that it's in a format or a way that's appealing to your audience. I'm going to share, or actually before, is there questions in the chat, Chelsea, before I move to the next piece?
Just kind of comments on how important being able to meet the business where they're at is. So thank you, Zoe, for your comments.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a example here, and I'm going to keep it super relevant with a Super Bowl ad. So for those of you in the audience who like to watch these, I've got a quick little one that I'm going to share with the group, and then we're just going to debrief it after.
For many people with blindness or low vision, there hasn't always been an easy way to capture daily life.
One face cropped. Move your phone down. One face in frame. Hold for photo.
Dinner for one. Hello.
One face and one pet in frame.
Look who's here.
2 faces in frame. Happy birthday. 2 faces.
Good morning.
2 faces.
First day in the new place.
2 faces. 2 faces. 2 faces in frame. 3 faces in frame. Hold for photo.
Capture life, no matter how you experience it. Guided frame only on Google Pixel.
Okay, so after watching, one of the things, I'll ask you is like, how do you feel? So if we have the emotion behind that, feel free to drop it in the chat. I've put a couple of the things that I feel when I watch that ad. I feel sort of fortunate, privileged, I'm in awe. I'm a little bit emotional about the idea of maybe not being able to just take a picture of my kids, right? What else do you feel? Yeah, love these. Okay. And then because it's an ad, we know what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to sell us. So really what I'd like to ask though is what is the action that you're going to take based on this? So, some of the things that I would take is, think about the types of photos that I take or how easy it is just for me to snap a picture at a given moment. You think about the advantages that I have because of that. And then also, as someone who does do some design work or even building presentations, maybe I need to think about the design choices I make to consider individuals who have, some visual difficulties or visual impairment. And then, expanded, which is I'm sure what Google would want is, consider their Google Pixel 8 or, to support Google in some other ways. So is there other actions or things that you would take away from that ad after watching it?
I just wanted to kind of encourage the conversation because I know we kind of talked about this on the side before. How does it make people feel when it is connected to an advertisement, when kind of that end goal is to buy the product? Does it make you more likely or does that turn you off? Because the context, I think, in any of these conversations can be so important too.
Oh, we've got a pattern recognition comment. I love it. Other people who need similar things. Yeah, this is great stuff. So lots of you are applying it to the work that you do and that type of thing too. Amazing. Okay, so when we break it down, so if we go back to the ethos, pathos, and logos, why did the ad work? From a credibility or a character perspective, the main character was believable. When they showed his first selfie, you could see that there was something visually different about his eyes, and it wasn't that hard of a leap to realize or to think that he may have a visual impairment. So we knew that it was a believable character. From the emotional side about it, right? It was a relatable story, lots of key life moments that, many of us have experienced or have seen other people witnessed other people experiencing, such as meeting a partner, running a race, the wedding, birth of a child. These are all big moments where there's lots of emotion embedded in those. And then the logical side of it, practically speaking, anyone should be able to document their life, right? We know that. They also did a really nice product demonstration, right? So you could see how the actual camera worked and how it talked to him while he was taking pictures to get him to make sure that it was, centered and all of that. And Google is also like a reputable and well understood brand. So there's the pieces of all of it that went into that ad, which are, and the ad is meant to help you purchase something. So the question that I often hear is like, why do we use ads as examples of communication? Well, for one thing, they only have 2 minutes or less to convey their message and get you to do something. So in the workplace, we often have more time than that. But some of the principles, still apply. And it's nice to see in an example where it's so obvious, right? Because the ad makes it really, really apparent what types of messages they're trying to communicate. Whereas in an hour-long meeting or something like that, it can be a little bit less succinct. So when we move this from looking at the ad to how do we apply it to work, I'm going to talk to you about the one that you're participating in today. So the scenario is that Chelsea and Yukun asked me to deliver a presentation on communication. And so part of why I'm hoping anyways that this is working is my credibility or character, right? Chelsea gave a really awesome bio, made me seem really smart. She was really positive about it. I've got the endorsement or the support of women in AI. So it's making it seem as though I'm a very, not seem as though it's supporting the idea that I'm a, well-respected speaker. I've got the backing of this amazing group. And then the other thing is that I included pictures of my daughter, which made me relatable, or I hope made me relatable and a little bit more of, a peer rather than this superior speaker from women in AI, if that makes sense. The emotional side of it. So how have I been using emotion in this presentation? Well, I showed you like a reasonably emotional video, and also as much as possible in this format, trying to encourage group participation. The logical piece of it, we shared some theory, we did some analysis on a video, and now we're demonstrating how to apply the theory. So that's the facts, right? This is how we're going to do it. So that's how you would apply this type of a pattern to communicating in the workplace. If we take it to another scenario, so not the one that we're in right now, but say, for example, I need another team to spend a few hours and do a data extract for my project. So I'm really relying on them to provide some information for me. The way that I could frame that argument, I could use a couple of different tactics depending on what I want to do and what I think would best suit the audience. But using the credibility or character, I could spend some time getting to know them, building goodwill. Then they're doing a favor to Tara if we've got a little bit of a relationship together. Or I could also just be like, hey, I'm the project manager, do it. Right? That's kind of like laying on the credibility or the character piece of it. The emotional piece, I could take another attack at it and say, you're the experts. I know you really, really know this. I know you're super busy, but really, could you help us out with this, and kind of play at the emotions a little bit, and also let them know that the request would really help me personally. So playing off that emotion bit. And then the other tactic that I could take is I could just be completely logical and say, hey, I need this information for my project. This is why I need it. This is the deadline which I need it by. Can you do it? And lay it out from a logical perspective. So I'm sure as we think in our work lives, we've had all types of these interactions with different folks at different times. And so really the magic is, which one do you use in what scenario? And how do you know when to do it? So we've got a magical unicorn here. Which tactics should you use? Should you go with the credibility? Should you go with the emotion, or just like a straight up logic? That's the question, right? And so there's always clues. And so what I want you to do is think about your audience when you are preparing. So it can either be preparing a presentation, it can be preparing for a discussion, it can be preparing for a debate. Anytime that you're interacting with business stakeholders, I want you to think about a few things, and you can either jot them down and be as formal as that, or even just keep them in your head, in the back of your mind. So the first question that I would ask is, how does that stakeholder typically make decisions? And there's lots of examples of that in the workplace, but to kind of polarize it, we know lots of people like to make decisions based on numbers, right? It will, doing this action will save us these amount of dollars, or doing this action will open us up to this percentage of a customer segment market, or something like that. they're real factual numbers types of people. And then we also know at the other end that there's people who will make decisions based on emotion or things like that. So understanding who your stakeholder is, who's actually making the decision, and how they prefer to make decisions is a really big clue for you. The other, if you don't know that person very well, is how have others been successful getting them to make a decision or to make a choice or provide some information? So is there another team that has been successful or another individual that has been successful working with them? What tactics did they use? And then the third, is there a formal process in place? Lots of big organizations will have, committees and things like that where decisions are held, but sometimes there's some outside influence or some back channeling that needs to happen ahead of time. So understanding both formally and informally how your organization works will give you some clues on which tactics you should use when you're talking with stakeholders. All right, so how does this all relate to communicating about tech? Using the right balance of ethos, pathos, and logos in storytelling to communicate difficult technical concepts. Okay, that's really where we want to be, is using the balance and using that to communicate difficult things that don't come intuitively to everyone in order to make decisions or choices or gain influence or whatever the purpose of your discussion is. Harvard Business Review tells us that the more powerful way to persuade people is by uniting an idea with an emotion, by telling a compelling story. So why are stories important? They solidify abstract concepts and simplify complex messages. So as an example, you can use a real life example for math or use a case study to better understand data. Stories promote and shape ideas, right? They engage our emotions. They bring people together. They have a universal language and they can help build community. And also, no matter what your background is, you understand the story of a hero, an underdog, or of heartbreak. And stories can inspire and motivate. And even a little bit of science is that when people listen to a story being told, their brainwaves actually start to align because people are feeling the same thing at the same time. And what that does is it causes people to unite over a common experience. So even if they weren't there at the time, hearing the story retold will still create that sense of a common experience. I just knocked over my computer. Apologies. Good now. This is a quote that I really like. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men or women to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. A few of my golden rules, and those who've worked with me know that this is probably one of my top one, is never, ever, ever, ever open up your code to help you explain a concept. I cannot tell you how many showcases I've been in or show and tells or something like that where someone on the technical team, a developer or data scientist or something like that, gets asked a question by a business stakeholder, and instead of using words to answer it, they say, "Oh, let me show you," and they open up their code. And to be honest, for someone such as a business stakeholder who's never looked at code, you might as well open it up in a different language. It is a different language, right? You might as well open it up in Japanese, Italian, you might as well just start using other words. Code will not help explain your answer. So if someone asks you a question, try your absolute best just to use words to answer. Do not open the code. My second golden rule is always use examples that are relevant to your audience. And here's an example which I shared with a few colleagues as well recently, where I was attending a course. It was actually a Google course. So, and what it was called Gen AI for business users. And so that to me says that there's likely no one in the audience who is a developer or can code or anything like that. And the example that they were using to illustrate what hallucination is write me the Terraform code to create a Google Cloud VPC with subnets in Iowa and Virginia. And the instructor typed that into Google Gemini, and then the result was, here is the Terraform code, blah, blah, blah. And then he scrolled through this long amount of code and showed us that, of course, the region wouldn't be blah, blah, blah for Virginia, because we all know it's blah, blah, blah. And it just missed the mark for business users. The reason it missed the mark, most won't know what Terraform code is. Most won't know what region Iowa and Virginia are in for setting up VPCs. A business user would 99% of the time never have to set up a Google Cloud VPC. It's just not a good example. And so if we think of a concept like hallucination, there's a whole bunch of other ways to explain that. And using code, or in this case, it was pulled out of Gemini, using that to describe what a hallucination isn't. You want to keep your example relevant to the audience. The next thing you want to make sure that you're doing, this is golden rule number 3, is eliminate technical language and define your acronyms. So technical language, things that I hear all the time: variable, overfit, hallucination, hyperparameter, feature, accuracy, explainability, performance, tuning. All of these are foreign concepts. And if we go back to that, image of like the brain and the physics, that's just in the data scientists or AI experts, right? Those are not common language or commonly understood by business stakeholders. So you need to be really careful about using technical language in stakeholder meetings. And then the second is making sure that you define all your acronyms. You don't need to do it every time you use them, only the first time, but make sure that they're defined. And so, things like LLM, it just in AI, who has roles in AI understands what an LLM is, but no one else does, right? No one else knows that that's a large language model or what that actually means. So make sure you're defining the acronyms that you use, and it makes you more accessible and the information that you're presenting more relatable. The fourth golden rule, which I often think about, is beginning with the end in mind. And that's one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. And I often think about this when I'm preparing for a meeting, whether it be putting together a presentation or, setting up the context or the structure for a discussion. But really, what is the outcome that I'm looking for? So if I think of the end in mind, am I hoping for a decision? Am I patient? Am I asking someone to take a specific action based on what I tell them? Am I trying to change someone's mind? Whatever the outcome is that I hope to get out of the discussion or presentation, I want to know what that is, so that then I can structure the whole presentation leading up to that, so that it's really clear. I'm not just throwing facts at them. I'm not just pulling at the emotional heartstrings, right? There's a real purpose behind it. And the story that I'm going to tell is going to end up helping them either make that choice, take that action, understand completely what I'm trying to share, invite them to share their opinion back. It'll get us to the right place in the end. So I'm going to take a pause there. I'm seeing lots of chat. I don't have it open. Chelsea, do people have questions?
Yeah, there was a really just great comment here from Rushika. She mentioned she had a different perspective on pathos because she's seen women frame tasks as personal favors, even when they're not. So I'm kind of getting that sense. It's that, impression of women in leadership maybe not getting the respect that they deserve, being difficult to be that direct person, say like, I'm the project manager, that's what that's what I expect. So yeah, thanks so much for that, Rashika. And I know Dylan kind of mentioned this specifically, maybe as a chat discussion, but I want to bring attention to just a question around ethos. Is that what in general are people's different preferred ways for people to ask about someone's background, because a significant other and himself have discussed how often that she has experienced the question coming kind of almost as a microaggression where she works in engineering. So yeah, I know these are just really good comments in general. If anyone wants to come off mute and either add to that or mention in the chat, please go ahead. Also, lots of bubbling around how, yes, always define your acronyms, because I've experienced there's even the same acronym in the same group in the same company can mean two different things. And I think it goes back to what we're kind of saying about just not showing your code in the same way. That's not inclusive, and not like, never mind, you're ultimately not getting your point and your communications across. It's that, yeah, you're gonna end up losing your audience, and that's your point when there's that gaps in those knowledge. So yeah, does anyone have a question they'd like to verbalize specifically for Tara? Yeah, you can raise your hand. Parisa, do you want to ask a question there?
Sure. Hi, and thanks, Tara, for the amazing presentation. I just wanted to go back to your point about like having this right balance of ethos, pathos, and logos. I often find it difficult to find that right balance. I assume it is based on like different perspective and different occasions, or like different business communication goals. But I just wanted to hear your take on like what is this right balance, and like how do you identify if this specific communication or presentation is not balanced? Like I went too far in terms of like emotions and or too many technicality involved. So yeah, I just want to hear that.
Yeah, thank you, Parisa. Good questions. I think one of the clues that you've missed the mark is how your audience responds to your delivery. And so if you ask, as an example, if you talk a lot and then ask an open-ended question and it's 100% silent, then you know something was missing. Or if they're asking questions that aren't related to the information that you just shared, as an example. So it's really a read of how the audience is responding that will tell you if you've hit the mark or not. And then by nature of how they're responding back to you, that can be clues into how to respond. Do you come at them with more logic, or would you respond in more of an emotional way to them? So it sort of opens the door to listening to how they respond, and then making your choice about how you respond to their response. Okay, I see some comments about the question about how you prefer people to ask your background, and I have a view on that, in that I wouldn't really ever ask someone like as direct as that, but if someone's bringing a perspective that is maybe surprising to me or something that I haven't heard, I would ask a softer question personally, along the lines of like, oh, that's really interesting. How did you come to that? Or like, what makes you think of that? And then that will open the door for them to say, as an example, oh, in my past workplace, we did it this way and blah, blah, blah was the result. So it allows them to share that way, but in a softer way. I don't know that I would never ever ask someone like, do you have a degree that backs that up? I wouldn't be that direct with them, but I would ask, something that would open the door to them to share why they have that perspective or where their thoughts are coming from.
I particularly like that because you're showing just general interest in the person. It's not, something that you're judging them on or assuming about them. You're actually checking that assumption. Tara, was going to say we have one question in the chat and also a hand up. Do you want to continue the flow of questions or the flow of the presentation? Totally your call.
Sure. Why don't we do a couple more questions? And then I do have some examples. I've finished up my golden rules here. So I have a couple examples and then we can open to more questions at the end.
Okay, great. Let's throw it over to Catalina.
Hi, thank you. A great talk. I have kind of like a /question/anecdote to tell. So I was new at this job and I asked somebody who was very technical proficient a question. My question was very simple. And I think she assumed because I was new that I kind of have no idea of the domain. And then she started answering in a very simple way, but also her answer was wrong. So then I have to change my language, talk like more technical to make her kind of understand like, no, I am like, I don't know about the subject matter, which she then felt embarrassed a bit. And she was like, oh, actually, I don't know the answer to your question. So I guess also that like, also the balance of when to also show that you are actually knowledgeable by using like specific terms so that people know, kind of build that confidence on people on you on technical matters.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's happened to everybody probably on this call, right? You ask something and then they give you the big explanation and you already knew most of it. So I think in that situation, there's nothing wrong with sort of politely interjecting and saying, I appreciate that. Let me reframe my question. I know this much about it. It's this specific question at the end is where I'm confused or where I need a little bit of guidance on. And so you can kind of cut that background that they're sharing with you and just say, I understand all that theory, but really this is the piece where I'm struggling or I need some assistance with. And then they can either answer it or I guess in the example that you gave, they can hopefully direct you to someone else who knows the answer to that specific piece. I think that that's completely appropriate rather than because what'll happen is if you let them go on and on about all of the theory and the background and all of this, then they have a perception about how much you know or don't know, right? So it's okay to let them know that you already know some of that stuff in a polite way. Okay.
There are 2 more questions in the chat.
Sure.
One is from Leslie. What could you recommend adapting your communication to your audiences in context entirely new for you? And another question, maybe you can address them together or separately. The other one is, what if the meeting have both business leaders, users, and technical co-workers? A question from Jamie.
Sure. So I'll address Leslie's question first. So if it's an audience in a context that's entirely new for you, then I would actually, depending on if it's a presentation or a discussion, I would really try, if it's a discussion, I would really try to listen more than speak. And so that will give you so much information about who you're working with. So if you can structure the conversation, like maybe given information about what you're looking for and then have a whole bunch of questions in mind. And depending on how they're answering, you could guide the discussion in the direction that you want based on that question answer type of technique. I would do that if that was an opportunity, if it's people that you haven't worked with before. If it is a group that's new to you, but it's more of a presentation style, then I don't think there's anything wrong with getting started and doing check-ins throughout your presentation. So instead of like rambling for the whole 45 minutes and slide after slide after slide, right? Talk for a little bit, pause, ask some questions, listen, get some feedback, and then keep moving. I think that's a really good technique if you're not sure. The other thing I would suggest is find out if there's someone who has been in that context before. So maybe there's a coworker who's dealt with that group, or maybe a colleague in a different organization has set something up similarly who could give you some advice as well. There'd be nothing wrong with that. And then just responding to Jingy's question, how do you handle if you've got both business leaders as well as technical colleagues? I think in that case, you would just need to go back to beginning with the end in mind. So what is the purpose of your discussion? And if the purpose of your meeting is to, as an example, get the business stakeholders to make a decision, then I truly think you should tailor your content to that, and maybe brief your technical colleagues ahead of time that that's the goal of the presentation. And if they have technical questions or something like that, maybe just ask them to handle it offline, or maybe do a dry run with them ahead of time and they can ask all their technical questions. But if your main goal of your presentation is to get a business leader to make a decision, you don't want to distract them or blurry that message by inviting too much technical discussion into it. Because what'll happen is, if your technical colleagues start asking you questions and you're responding technically, 9 times out of 10, I bet the business people are just going to be like, oh, I'm going to flip to my email till these people are done. And then they're going to come back in and refocus later. So try and keep it's back to like keeping the end in mind. What is the purpose of your presentation? All right. Thank you for the feedback in the chat. Okay, so am I okay to move on? We'll just do the last couple examples here that I have, and then if there's more questions, happy to take them at the end. Okay, so first example, and we can respond to these in the chat if people would like to keep it interactive. So the first one is, your project team is pursuing a technical approach that you disagree with. You worked on something similar with your previous team, but aren't certain that it's the right approach for the situation. However, you're confident that it would at least be closer than the one that your team is pursuing. How do you influence your team to think differently about the problem? What would you do in that situation? Yeah, good point. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to verbalize your answer.
I would be transparent, just share that we have done something with our previous team. I don't know if it's the right direction, but I would like to share this with the team, and we can discuss if this is the right way or the approach that we would want to try.
Yeah, exactly. So you can add some credibility by explaining that you've done it in a different situation, right? Like, and you had success, presumably. Or maybe you did the same thing and didn't have success. You could also add that as well.
I like Lori's comment here to ask questions to understand their perspective, because I thought something first too, like, honestly, not to downplay your own pieces, but try to understand, like, why am I so confident in the approach? Could some kind of hybrid approach that incorporates both perspectives matter? Yeah, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Chelsea, and thanks, Sarah. I would say in this case, like, would it be best to just showcase the value of the previous approach, and like how is that different from the current technical approach that the team is pursuing? Like, just to show like a comparative analysis, and that way you could display the value, and hopefully that would make them, would influence how the team is thinking about the problem.
Sure, that's a very logical approach to it, right? Yeah. There's another comments in the chat. Yeah.
Samadrita said something along similar lines of create a comparison of the past and proposed approach and discuss the details with the team so that everyone is aware on why the suggested approach would be a better fit.
Yeah, 100%. And the truth is with these examples, there isn't a right or wrong way, right? It's understanding your audience, who you're working with, understanding yourself and what you're comfortable with, I will say that lots of technical people will lean that way, right? How about I just lay out my argument, right? We did it this way, here are the results. We want to do it this way. Here's what we hope to get the results. But even in this situation, there is probably a little bit of emotion tied to it, right? Someone had an idea, the whole team has some inertia heading one direction, right? And so not to discount that, right? That sometimes even the emotion around something could be a barrier to changing direction. So don't be afraid to think of it in ways that aren't always, the purely logical fact-based argument. All right, we'll jump to the next example here. So the example is you completed the EDA, exploratory data analysis, on your project. The work was really technically complex and the data is from a facet of the business that you have very little experience with. How should you validate the feature importance with the stakeholders? And I'll give you a giant hint. That question was full of technical language.
Go ahead, Yasir.
So how would you validate the feature importance? Like if you've done the EDA, I guess you could try to use simpler models and use, like, I don't know, like instead of using something more technical, like boosted decision trees or whatnot, and CHAP, you could use like a linear regression. That way people can easily understand, like, let's say the coefficients or something like that. I don't know, just a thought.
I would only challenge you there to say, even like, try and imagine it might have been decades since some people have even seen or have done a linear regression. But I have been there. Actually, the example of Tara calling out overfitting is too technical was me. So you're highlighting why it's so hard, especially as you get more advanced in your career, because it's hard to imagine when you've been, deep in the forest for so long, that it's not a common place.
Right.
But no,
Right.
keep contributing, and that's how you can like learn those things from other people.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Rushika, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would, put it very in a non-technical manner. I would say that we did some data analysis, and partnering with the subject matter experts is key, right? Usually the technical team do not always know what the data is, what it means, and the nuances. So it's very, very key to partner with the data owners, data stewards. And to speak in a non-technical way is the way to go. So I would put it in a very simple term, like we did some data analysis and we're not really sure about, certain terms, or to be able to help with that. And also our goal is to, let's say, predict X, right? And in your experience, what are the drivers that impact X? So I would put it very non-technical manner, and I would ask this question in that way.
I like those ideas, and I like some of the ones I'm seeing in the chat too, right? So it's about taking it from like this level and making it just a little bit more accessible for people to understand. So how does the data contribute to the outcome that we're measuring? How do you measure success, right? What metrics do you use? These are all good examples of how you can get that same information without using all of the technical language. Here's another one. Your project manager is pressuring you to estimate how much effort is required to complete your work and doesn't understand the iterative nature of AI work. How do you explain it clearly to him or her so that they'll get off your back and just let you work?
Why are you so relatable, Tara?
Because I am the project manager in this case. I've had this experience. Thank you, though.
I think Ginny, yeah. Oh yeah, Ginny.
Hi, Chelsea. Hi, Tara. Yeah, great presentation. And yeah, I do feel relatable to this problem. And I feel we still need to explain like the iterative nature of AI work, And because that's just to facilitate the project manager to manage the timeline and cost and all the things on their end, right? And we just need to kind of explain the modeling work is iterative, and the first round we probably work on like some feature engineering, feature selection, build a base model to test if it's feasible or not. And second round, we can do more refinement in the modeling and in the models and features and so on and so forth. Yeah, we do need to break down, the task and kind of give some explanations on the work we need to do.
Yeah, that's great advice. And one of the things I would also say, I appreciate Dylan's humor. Tantrum is the right response, but the idea of breaking it down, and that's that can be used for all sorts of technical concepts, right? Instead of talking about this big abstract thing, how do you break it down and explain it in a way that's understandable? Okay.
I have something to share here.
For sure.
I have a very similar experience before. Someone asked me about this, but it's not a response to their project manager. It's for the leader very high up. And what I share with her is, think about iPhone, how good this Apple company is, but every year they have new iPhone come out, and every year there's an iteration, and every year there's people pay for it. So don't expect AI is something that you build one time and then it's done. iPhone is every year is good, every version is good, but you always wanting to upgrade your iPhone. So that's an example, and they laughed when I was sharing that. But I think this is especially when you talk to some leaders, they don't know the technical terms. iPhone is a case that they use every day, and yeah, that's what I want to share.
That's a beautiful example. I've also often used the example of like the Home Depot website when trying to explain metadata to people, because they stakeholders will understand how they want to shop and how they want, if they're looking for a fridge, right, that's an appliance, and they can look by brand. They understand the concept of metadata in the context of a shopping website, but when you ask them to apply metadata to their work data, it's just like, right? So the iPhone, the websites, the things like that are completely relatable and part of everyday life are really great examples of ways to explain technical concepts. All right, the last example we have here, I see there's lots of really good things going on in the chat too, so thank you for that.
Tara, I just wanted to really quickly draw some attention to Vasco had a comment here that I think was really good for this example, that this is also a good opportunity to educate the business on iterative work. This is something that my leader has actually mentioned for our showcases. People might be in a different field, but they're still encouraged to learn, and it's a great opportunity that if you can, give them some fundamentals and basics to work with, you can use that as a teaching opportunity. So thanks for that one, Vasco. That's awesome. And sorry, Tara.
That's okay. Thanks, Vasco. Nice to see you. Okay, the last one here that I had was, you're very excited to try out a large language model to solve a business problem, and you got approval for a proof of concept. However, the model keeps hallucinating. How do you communicate to your stakeholders that it just isn't working? All right, and we're right at 1 o'clock. So I see people are leaving, which I respect, because we're right at the end of time. So why don't we just leave this one? We worked through 3 examples, which was amazing. I really appreciate your feedback on those. So my final thought, find out what works for you, practice, rehearse. And there's my contact info. If you have questions or follow-ups, feel free to reach out to me. We did have a fair amount of discussion in the middle, so we don't have a ton of time for questions. I'm happy to stick around, though, if anyone else does have a question they want to ask at the end here.
Thank you so much for everyone being a great audience. I love this kind of interaction. And yeah, thank you so much, Tara. Also, a good reminder that soft skills are so fluid. Like there's no real mastery at any point because it's such a continuous process. So thanks for all of these really great reminders. And yeah, thank you so much for the time, Tara.
No problem. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah.